Add and subtracting integers. I can add and subtract integers and understand why the rules work. So yesterday we played the little Olympics and we looked at adding integers and we asked ourselves who won by how much. And we figured out that when the signs were the same, like negahe or negatives had both, we add and we kept the sign. So an example would have been like -7 plus a -2. The negatives won both games, and you add them to get 9. So negatives had 9 points. When the signs were different, we figured out that we are subtracting. It's really the sign of the absolute value of the larger number. Something easier to remember might be the sign of the larger digit. It's not technically correct, but we wanted to look at it's the absolute value of that. So when we look at it, we want to say, for instance, if we had -5 plus 3, we would say who won the game? The -5s did, so it's negative. By how much? By 2. So it's the larger digit that won more points, and that's why it's negative. So when we model addition, what we're really doing is we have two ways. Really 3, but we can add in chips. We can do it through chips. We can do it through a number line, or we can say who won by how much. So let's look at this. If I have a -5 chips in there and I need to add in 2 more chips, I end up with a -7 chips. So that would have been, I started at a -5, so listen to these rules, and I always start facing the larger numbers. I see a positive. Anytime I see a negative or subtracting sign, I must flip around. And then I go 2 spots, which gets me to a -7. Or who won? Negahe won them both, and 5 plus 2 is 7. But really looking at this modeling today. So let's model another one. If we have 5 pluses and we need to add in 2 negatives, 1, 2. Well, we know a positive and a negative cancel out. So that cancels out and that cancels out. So we're left with 3. So if I'm doing it on a number line, I would start at 5, always facing the bigger numbers. I have addition, and then I have a negative, so I need to turn around, and I'm going to go to the left 2 spots. And again, I'm left at 3. Or who won? The positives. By how much? By 3. So right now on your sheet you have, I want you to print it out or do it in your notebook. I want you to model this one for me. So stop the video now and show me how to model -5 plus 2. All right, I'm just going to draw them in. So -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I then need to add in 2 positive chips. So now I can cancel them out. These 2 cancel and these 2 cancel. So I'm left with a -3. Or if I'm starting at a -5 and I'm always going to start facing the bigger numbers and I go 2 spots, 1, 2, I'm at a -3. Who won in this case? The negatives. By how much? By 3. So there's 3 different ways to show it. All right, so let's look at subtracting. I'm going to model this one for you, and then you're going to do a couple yourself. 5 minus 2, so I have plus 5. And then I need to take away 2. So it's showing 3. Or in this case, I have a runner. His front foot is right on the 5. Remember, he always faces a higher number. I'm going to flip him because I see a subtracting sign, and now I'm going to move him 2. 1, 2, and he ends up right at that 3 mark. So I'd like you to try to model this one. Stop the video now. Come back when you think you have it. All right, so let's take a look. I have 5 negatives, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to take away 2 negatives. So if I take away 2 negatives, I'm left with a negative 3. I'm going to actually remove the little guy so that way it looks like what you have. So I have a negative 3, always facing the higher numbers. I see the subtraction, which tells me to turn around. I then see the negative, which tells me to turn back around. And now I need to go 2 spots. Oops, I should have started at 5. Sorry about that. Negative 5 is where I should have started at. And I need to go 2 spots, which leaves me at a negative 3. One more. Let's model this one. Let's do it together. If I have 5 pluses in there and I need to take away 2 negatives. So let's do it on the number line. I'm starting at 5, facing the higher direction. I need to turn around because of the minus. I need to turn back around because of the negative 2, and I need to move 2 spots. I'm left at 7. So that's weird because it looks like I'm adding. So if I have 5 chips, I need to take away 2 negatives. But there isn't any negatives to take away. So I'm going to put in a 0 pair because that doesn't affect it. I'm going to put in one more. Now I have 2 negatives to take out. 1, 2, and I'm left with 7. So anytime you see a negative and a negative right next to each other, it's like a double negative, it makes it a positive. So these are really turning to positives. So in your notebook right now, I want you to write subtracting integers. Subtracting integers really means that you add the opposite. That's the mathematical terminology. We're going to take one like negative 3 minus 3. We add the opposite is what it means. But we're going to make it simpler. We're going to call it simplify and add. All right, so let's look at a couple examples here. I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. Now, if you simplify, remember we talked about combining like terms. We want to remember to always circle what's in front of the number. So here we have 10 and we have a negative 6. So we just ask ourselves that's our simplifying. Now we just add them. Who won? The positives did. By how much? By 4. We also know 10 minus 6 is 4. But let's look at another one. We have a negative 10 and a negative 6. Who won? The negatives by, well, the negatives won them all, so by 16. Next one, we have a 10 and we have a negative 6. Remember, negative, negative, which we turn to a positive. It's a double negative. So really we have 10 plus 6, which is 16. Try the last one. Anytime I see these, I'm going to do it immediately. I'm going to put them adding. So now I have a negative 10 and a positive 6. Who won? The negatives by how much? By 4. So your worksheet's attached.